This is your Pain Game podcast, where we talk about the game of living in and with chronic pain and trauma, getting to the heart of how to heal. I am your host, Lyndsay Soprano. On this show, I plan on discussing with doctors, chronic pain patients, holistic practitioners, loved ones, and anybody that is interested in having their voice heard in the chronic pain and trauma world that we live in. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about energy. And when thinking about it, it's kind of like, what is it? What is energy, right? I mean, we're surrounded by energy drinks, that would probably just turn me into a monster. And I was Googling like things that give you energy, right? And all these random things come up. One that came up in researching for this episode today were get shit done capsules. I damn near died. I was like, who's buying these things, right? And Red Bull has never given me wings, never. And I feel like energy is looked at by so many of us as something to sell, like a product, right? Not something to feel and help us to heal ourselves. And also, quite frankly, to respect and love ourselves and others that are in our lives. And so every single one of us has, in fact, I just got them, the goosebumps. We get the chills, and not just because it's cold outside, but there's vibrations all around us in the universe, from music, from emotions, I cry watching commercials. Super Bowl gets me every time, and then also from pain and from trauma and from happiness. I mean, there's all this amazing energy around us, right? And we cannot deny that connection that we have between some science, if you believe in it, or don't get me started on that, and spirituality, right? And to be clear, not religion, because I'm not a religious person. I'm definitely spiritual in nature. So when we're faced with, or have been faced with, stressors and anxiety and chronic pain issues and traumas, which is a lot of the reasons why we're all sitting here listening to this, certainly the reason that I'm sitting here, where do you think all of this is being stored, right? It's being stored in our bod. And it blocks good energy from actually giving us wings. So these stressors and traumas make our brain go haywire. And it always makes, and I always say that I feel like I'm running from a bear, and everybody's got their own bear, whatever that is, right? Well, that doesn't help us heal at all, because we're in fight or flight all the time. Not to be super cliche with that phrase, because it's overused a lot, and I'm just going to keep overusing it. But as I researched for this show and I continue to learn more ways that we can heal. And one way is something called tapping. It's also known as EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And it is also referred to as psychological pressure. And all three ways of referring to this technique to treat physical pain and emotional distress seem fitting to me. Like, tap out your pain, take the pressure off your psyche, and live free again. And that to me just sounds amazeballs. And people who use this technique believe that tapping the body can create a balance in your energy system and treat pain. And the developer of this technique, his name is Gary Craig, and I did a little research on this dude. So he believes, according to the developer, that it is a disruption in energy is the cause of all negative emotions and pain. And that, dear Lord, if you saw my skin right now, I've just got the chills popping out at me, because that is so incredibly powerful to hear. So really quick before I introduce my guest, so she's freaking rad, guys. We had a meet and greet prior to recording this episode, and I felt like absolute dog poo. Like, I felt horrible. And my pain was like a solid P7. I didn't sleep yet again. My stress level was gnarly. And I was so nervous to show up, because I wanted to show up for my guest in so many ways. And I just was like, I feel horrible. And I didn't have time to wallow in it. So I show up. I was prepping for my trip that I was going on over the holidays to France and Spain. And I was mangled up with like last minute travel snafus and like massive amounts of tinsel and unwieldy family members, And I was talking so fast in the beginning of meeting her. And I am a fast talker, so I have to slow down sometimes. I understand that. But she must have thought I had like 10 cups of coffee. But something about her incredible energy just calmed me. And within 15 minutes with her, and she didn't do anything to me, she just talked with me. my stress like lifted, my anxiety kind of chilled, and my energy just felt better being with her. And so without further ado, I'm bringing this hottie in here for you. Her name is Lauren Fonvielle. Hey, girl.
Hey, well, that was such a nice intro. Thank you.
Well, I've got to get people wanting you, baby. She is an integrative energy practitioner specializing in this EFT that I've been talking about. And she believes that we all have answers within and that sometimes we just need a little help accessing them. Her fields of study don't just lie in EFT, but in trauma-informed yoga, which I can't wait to talk to you about that actually. Reiki, mindfulness and meditation, and sound healing. She brings over 15 years of prior experience from her roles in corporate marketing to further assist and support her entrepreneur and aspiring entrepreneur clients, which is also an interesting spin. So I can't wait to talk to her about all this. So are you ready, babe?
I am ready. Let's go.
All right, let's roll the red carpet out for you. So I'd like to start with what brought you into this healing and energy work to start and kick this puppy off?
Yeah, I was at a point in my life where I was dealing with a whole lot of anxiety and stress. And it got to a point where I was having panic attacks. And I knew that I needed to do something to feel better. The trigger for me at that point was we found out that my husband was going to go on his third deployment. And it was going to be the first deployment since having kids. And while we had done these deployments in the past, this time he was in the reserves. So it was different. We weren't expecting it, kind of came out of left field. And because I didn't have the prep time that I normally do, it just set my anxiety off. It was really the motivation of knowing that I had to show up as my best self for my kids that really pushed me to figure out how to deal with this. And it was a journey. It started with yoga, just going to a yoga class. I had done yoga on and off for years prior to that. And I had, toyed around with the idea of possibly getting certified to teach. But in this particular class, we'd also just moved, changed states. So I didn't have any family or friends. And I went to this class and there was a flyer about yoga teacher training. And something deep within me was like, that's what I have to do. That's going to help me. And that was the first step. And then being at the yoga studio, I was around people that were talking about energy a lot. And that's where I was introduced to my Reiki master, studied under her, where I got to experience sound healing classes and started studying that. And then I signed up for some group coaching. And in that group coaching program, I was introduced to EFT and felt a really significant shift in my body. And I wanted to learn more. And so I kept studying it and went on to get certified so that I could share it with other people and really be effective at sharing it with other people.
That is awesome. And because I didn't know about the military background. I mean, we had talked about you moving around. I had my thoughts, but I've moved 18 times in 10 years and it's not because of the military. So talk about stress and anxiety. What do they say? Like the top stressors are like death, divorce, and moving. Okay, all of the above, right? Yeah. Just back to back to back. It's like, no wonder I'm sitting in a wheelchair for part of my life and my pain is so high. And it's so interesting when we were talking about in our meet and greet about triggers, and you just brought it up again, and how we have to get so much better about identifying what those are.
Yeah, the awareness. The awareness is key. Recognizing when you're thinking about something, how that is making you feel in your body. And a lot of the time we don't take the time to check in periodically throughout the day and be like, ask ourselves that question. How am I feeling? And if the answer is I'm feeling great, amazing. Well, what are you thinking about right now? Right. And make that connection. And if the answer is like, I'm feeling sad or depressed, what is it that I'm thinking about? And the more that you begin to connect those things, the more clarity you can get. And when we recognize that our thoughts create our feelings, and then our feelings create our actions, and then our actions will then create our results. So it all starts with our thoughts and being mindful of what those thoughts are.
And that's hard to do, especially when we are bombarded with noise 24 hours a day. I mean, between Instagram to, all of the email we get, especially during the holiday season, my God, just constantly bombarded with all of these things. And it distracts us from the stuff that's so much more important than, Victoria's Secret panty sales, which I got like 100,000 emails from Victoria's Secret. I'm like, I don't even shop here anymore. So, and I believe wholeheartedly in that, because with me, with my anxiety, because I used to have really bad debilitating anxiety. I'm much better than I was, but I need to get better at it. And one of the things that I started to do was just what you said. I was like, wow, all of a sudden I'm sweating, my chest is tight. What am I thinking about? And like 75% of the time, it was something really stupid. I'm like, why am I anxious about that? Like, what?
Right. Where we
So,
spend our energy, right? It's like being mindful of how we are spending our energy. And a lot of that has to do with emotions. And the definition of emotion is energy in motion. This idea that our emotions need to be felt. They want to be felt. And I think that's an important thing to acknowledge, because a lot of the time when we're talking about emotions that are uncomfortable, like sadness, frustration, anger, we tend to push that stuff down and we distract ourselves with something else so that we don't have to feel those uncomfortable emotions, right? And that can work in the short term, right? Maybe you throw yourself into your work, or you throw yourself onto your couch and you're eating too much or drinking too much, whatever it is, to not feel those things. But when we take the time to really acknowledge how we're feeling, then that emotion can begin to move through us. And it doesn't continually feel like we're running from the emotion, but we're moving through it and we're moving forward, and we can make progress in that way. You got to feel it to heal it, baby.
feel to heal it, you got it. What's the other one that I like to use? It's the only way out is through.
Yes.
And it's true. That's what I'm doing here with you right now. I'm like literally going through what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
And I certainly went through that in our meet and greet, like right before your very eyes. You're like, wow, this girl is a loose cannon here today.
No.
Well, I have a lot of energy for somebody that lives in the kind of pain that I do, but I'm so grateful that I am the personality type that I am, and that was given this. I am now calling it a blessing, because I've gotten, the opportunity to meet people like you. So
Yeah.
we told you the tissues were going to come out.
I mean, it's a beautiful thing to really allow ourselves to feel how we're feeling and to use that to fuel us, right? Because I know for me growing up, like I was always told, "Oh, you're too sensitive. You're so sensitive. You're a crybaby." And now I like to say my sensitivity is my superpower, right? And that
Ooh, I like that.
and I think that that's like also being able to feel other people's emotions, right? Tuning into other people's emotions. And I would say that I'm an empath, and I'd be willing to bet that you're an empath too.
As I'm grabbing extra tissues out of
And as empaths, we can feel a lot, and being able to recognize that, and also recognizing what's yours and what's not yours, being able to protect your energy is an important thing, because sometimes there's those energy vampires, and then it's not necessarily that people mean to be sucking you dry, but some people do. And so you need to be aware of your own energy, how you're spending your energy, who you're exchanging energy with. All of those things come into play.
I love that about the exchanging the energy with. I literally had a conversation last night with my sweetie about this, because there are toxic people in his world and there have been toxic people in mine. And last night, one of them wanted to come back into my life, and I put the hard stop on it. And we kind of got into it a little bit about, well, he wants to, mend the relationship and all that. I'm like, he had 25 years to do that. I do not miss him at all. Like, he was my friend for like a long, long time. And I just, it got to the point that his toxicity in his life was just adding more to mine. And I had to choose me. And it was really, really, really hard, because there are two little girls involved with that relationship. They're not mine, but I consider them to kind of be mine. They're these sweet little twin girls. And I had to make a choice whether I was potentially going to lose them. And I still had to choose me. And I did. And then last night I ended up going out with my girls. So, I got the girls at the end of it, but I literally had to take that risk for myself. And that was one of the hardest things I've had to do outside of stopping eating cheese, right? That's the hardest thing I've ever had to do. My God, forget CRPS.
Yeah. I mean, emotions can be complicated. And a lot of the time We stuff the stuff down because we're scared to feel it, or there's a fear there that if you feel it, you're not going to come back from it, right? If you've been pushing down all of this anger for years and years, and then it's like, okay, let's invite the anger in. Let's feel the anger. It's like, no, I don't want to do that. And so I think what's beautiful about tapping is that it can help you acknowledge and sit with and feel your emotions in a gentle way. It's never that you have to like jump in and relive any trauma or experience things that you're not ready for. It's a very, very gentle approach.
Let's talk about what this actually means, because I was on a call with somebody the other day and we were on Zoom, and all of a sudden this gal just started like tapping herself. And I was like, I've seen it in a group setting before. And I've attempted to do it, but like we talked on our meet and greet, it was a very awkward situation. I don't think it was being led in a way that was going to work for me, or maybe and I could feel that energy in the room where kind of people were looking at each other like, I feel stupid doing this. That's one of the things. So I kind of want to address that topic too. Like, kind of look stupid, like banging your fingers
100%.
on your forehead.
If you've never heard of it, right? If you've never heard of it, and then somebody's telling you, okay, we're going to tap and we're going to talk about how we feel, and that's going to help with your anxiety and stress, and it's also going to help with your physical pain. I mean, my reaction when I was first introduced to it was like, yeah, okay, like,
Yeah, sure, kid.
and that was also, after I had been introduced to Reiki and had experienced Reiki and knew that, but still, like, there was this skeptical side of me, like, tapping on myself is going to do something. So if you are listening to this and you're skeptical, that's okay. Like, I was there and it's totally okay. I think what helped me, number one, was experiencing it in my own body, because once you feel something for yourself, you can't really deny it. You're like, oh, something is happening right now, right? Like, that was one thing. And then also that there is a lot of science that backs this up. And there are studies that have been done, and it has been shown to reduce cortisol. And cortisol is the stress hormone. So as you're tapping on these points, it's sending a message to the amygdala in the brain. And that's the part of the brain that controls fight or flight. And that's the part of the brain that's sending that alarm system off. So if you're somebody who's dealing with chronic anxiety or chronic stress, chronic pain, that alarm center is firing all the time. And that's not healthy, right? That's there for those times when we need to fight back. We need to run away or protect ourselves. But when we're talking about the chronic anxiety and stress, it's sending all of that cortisol into our body, and it's overwhelming, and it can get you to that point where you don't even feel like you're thinking straight. And so tapping on the points, and the points that we're tapping on are the end points of the meridians. And so when I describe it to people, I compare it to acupuncture, because people are more familiar with acupuncture. And so if you were to go to an acupuncturist, they would take those little needles and put them in at some of these same points that we're tapping on. And it is stimulating the meridians. The meridians are how energy moves through the body. And then it's also sending that message to your brain that you don't need to be in fight or flight. And it's been shown to reduce the cortisol levels by up to 43%.
Whoa, that's a huge number.
Big, big number. And that was a study that was done by Dr. Peta Stapleton. She is based out of Australia and has some amazing studies that she's done on a wide variety of topics, from anxiety and stress, chronic pain, PTSD. This can help with so many different things. It has been shown to down-regulate like inflammation, which is a big deal, especially if you're someone that's dealing with chronic pain, because inflammation is a big part of chronic pain.
Yeah.
It has been shown to reduce the symptoms of PTSD. There was a study that I refer to a lot, I think, because it's so important to me as a military spouse, because so many veterans do have PTSD. And this study, they had one-on-one sessions with the veterans in this group over a 6-week period. They met with them once a week, tapped with them. And then at the end of the 6 weeks, 90% of the people in this group had a reduction in their PTSD symptoms. I mean, that's a really big percentage there too. And then they checked in with them 3 months later, the reduction was still there. 6 months later, the reduction was still there. And then at that point, they were tapping on their own. So you can create that lasting change. And, my story with it, when I experience anxiety and stress, that really manifests as a flare up in my TMJ, in my neck and in my jaw. And at that time in my life, it was bad. My jaw would really lock up, couldn't open my mouth all the way. And when I was first introduced to this in a group session, I felt a lot calmer, and I was intrigued by the idea that it could help with chronic pain. So I had a one-on-one session, and the way that it works is that the practitioner is just peppering you with questions. And so she was asking me, how does it make you feel that you have TMJ? And I was frustrated, right? So then we used those words, like my words. She would say a sentence, and I would repeat after her, and we would tap on the points. I'm so frustrated. All of this frustration, right? And then as we're tapping on it, she's continuing to ask me questions and continuing to encourage me to really notice how I'm feeling physically, noticing what thoughts are coming up. And as we were tapping on the frustration, I started recognizing that I was feeling really angry. And so we start tapping on the anger, and I was angry because the dentist who removed my wisdom teeth, which is what triggered my TMJ, which was about 15 years prior to this tapping session, he dislocated my jaw to get my wisdom teeth out, and I did not know that that was going to happen. And so all of this anger towards this doctor started to surface. And I really didn't realize that I had been holding on to this for so long. So I'm tapping about how angry I am at him. And then the feeling kind of switched to betrayal. Like I felt really betrayed because I did not know that this was a possibility. I was very young, I don't know, 21. And you sign your life away when you when you go in for any sort of procedure.
Oh, I
And
know. It
I'm
gets
sure
worse and worse by the year, too.
yeah, like I'm sure that it was in the fine print that if your mouth is too small, well, just dislocate your jaw. Like what?
We're just gonna
Anyway.
give you a nice shiner in the side of your head. My God.
So anyway, so then I start tapping on that betrayal, and I share this story because this is what can happen, right? So then I had what I felt like was an unrelated thought. I had a thought about a friendship and a betrayal in a friendship, completely unrelated. I thought it was unrelated. And so because
She rolled her eyes.
yeah, because the practitioner kept on, encouraging me to share whatever is coming up. And I was like, okay, so I have this thought of this friend, but I really don't think it's related. And she was like, yeah, we're going to tap on it anyway. I was like, okay. So then we start tapping on the specifics of that situation and the betrayal and that friendship. And ultimately, the session ends with me feeling sad. So it starts with me feeling really frustrated that I'm dealing with TMJ and can't eat foods and, go about my day. It's limiting me, to then ending the session feeling sad. And the other thing, at the beginning of the session, she asked me, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, where's the pain level? And I was at like an 8 that day. And by the end of the session, I was at a 2. And
Ooh.
so that blew my mind because I had been doing all sorts of things to try and reduce the pain, from going to get the night guard thing that you sleep with, to massages, to rubbing peppermint oil on there, to only eating softer foods, and that wasn't touching the pain, but really getting to that anger and that betrayal. There was a release. So that was clear to me that there was an emotional component to my physical pain. And that was such a profound experience. Now that's, I want to say that is not always the case, right? Like it's not like when I'm working with a client that has chronic pain that they have that kind of shift in one session. That is not always the case, but it is possible. And it was my experience. And that's not to say that I still don't, sometimes get pain in my jaw, but now it's like, okay, there's something going on. I'm aware. Okay, something's going on in my body. I need to take the time to figure out like what's happening and why I'm feeling this way. So it's an indicator, and it's helped me manage a lot of anxiety and stress in my life, and in turn my pain level too.
It's fascinating. I mean, I'm saying I wanted to interrupt you 37 times. And it's funny because I have a sticky note that says, no interrupting, Lyndsay. And I showed it to her before we started today. Because I was like, no, but this isn't about you right now, Lyndsay. It's not. But it is too, because I'm like, I have done the whole kit and caboodle, throw hundreds of thousands of dollars, quite frankly, between spinal cord stimulators to, acupuncture, to massage, to this, to that. I mean, I've tried so many different things, but now I feel like I'm learning so many different types of tools for my toolbox that I have to sort through these all now as these healthier ways of treating pain and healing yourself from past lives, for all we know, traumas and abuse and what have you. So my question then with you, when you started out so frustrated and then you moved into anger and betrayal and then it was sadness, in my mind, that isn't, even though you ended in sadness, I don't necessarily think that's a negative.
No, it was in my book, it was a positive, like,
Right.
because I had a difference, a huge difference in my pain levels. It made me recognize how I think I had stuffed down that situation with my friend and really didn't acknowledge like the heartache that came with, losing that friendship. Um, but no, I don't think it was a bad thing. I don't think, I think that's something, it's an interesting point because I feel like sometimes we can think like, oh, feeling sadness is bad, right? We can categorize emotions as good and bad emotions, and they're really not. There's not a good and a bad emotion. And the emotions are just indicators from your body. It's how your body is able to communicate with you. And it's this idea that, we really need to listen to the whispers so we don't need to hear it scream. And so, when you feel the little things, tapping into that, really allowing yourself to like recognize that something's going on. And sometimes it's a physical sensation, right? I give the example of when I was training for a half marathon and I had a pain in my foot, but the pain at first, it was only when I was running and it was tolerable. And then I was like, it's fine. I can keep going. I don't want to mess up my schedule. And I would keep running. And then the pain was like, oh, now it hurts when I walk too. And then it was like, oh yeah, every step is like painstakingly difficult. And then I finally go to the doctor and I had a hairline fracture. Right. And so,
Oh my God.
and so it's like,
Holy crap,
yeah,
girl.
you need to listen to your body in it, but it's the same thing with our emotions. We need to listen when we're feeling something, and there's beauty in that.
There is. And I think I'm going to go back to the sadness part for just a sec, because I believe wholeheartedly in what you said about how like sadness doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Yeah.
For me, the irony of this whole loss of friendship conversation that is here right now with what I'm going through, and I'm sitting here going, I haven't even begun to process the loss of 25 years of a friendship and the damage that has been done. I'm not perfect in the relationship either, by the way. I'm the first person to be like, yeah, I sucked bad at that particular part in my life, especially as I do more and more inventory on myself. But I feel sad for that whole like, oh my gosh, I haven't worked through any of that stuff yet. So it kind of, to me, aligns with that feeling of yours. Like that makes sense that all of a sudden you would feel sad. Like, wow, I haven't even mourned that relationship, doesn't take sometimes, and I know some people might poo-poo me for saying this, but sometimes it's easier to lose people to death than it is to lose them when they're alive and they're 10 minutes away from your house, because you're like, am I going to run into them in the supermarket?
Yeah, it's a whole different kind of mourning. Yeah.
Okay, so how long does a session take typically? And also, how long does it take typically for people that are pretty not aggressive? I don't like that necessarily, that word choice, but really go after like, I'm going to make this a habit. I'm going to make it a ritual in my life. When I'm feeling this, I'm going to do this. How long does it take for people to start feeling, a little bit better and knowing how to hit the right meridians, when they're supposed to do it, how they do it? What is that process as far as length of time is concerned?
Yeah. So when I have sessions with my clients, those are an hour long and it goes fast. I mean, some people are like, I'm tapping for an hour, but
Right, yeah.
it really does go fast. And it's a very organic process of one thought really leading to the next. It's very much a collaborative process together. And is something that you can use this proactively, right? So like as you're saying, you can do it as part of your self-care on a daily basis, and I always encourage that because you'll be more likely to use it reactively in those times when you're really feeling stressed out, feeling overwhelmed, right? We're going to use the tools that we're more comfortable with using. So I will always encourage people to tap even for just a few minutes every day, whether it's at the end of the day, just, acknowledging anything that came up for you that day, kind of working through your thoughts and feelings of the day, or maybe, at the beginning of the day, if you are someone maybe who has a meditation practice, I will encourage people to tap a little bit before meditating, because sometimes people will say that they have monkey mind and they struggle to really sink into a meditation, and tapping on the thoughts that you're having, I feel like it kind of sweeps them out to the sides so that you are able to sink into a meditation more. So, as far as like creating a habit, I think, they say what, 21 days, or they'll say, sometimes like people say 90 days. And I think that's true. It's also important to attach it to something that you're already doing. And the biggest thing that people will say is like, "Oh, I don't have time. There's not enough time in the day, right?" And so I always say, "Hey, you can do it in the shower when you got the shampoo in your hair. Do a couple rounds of tapping, and just tapping and talking, right? Instead of singing in the shower, you can tap and you can tap and talk." And when I work with my clients, we typically will start working together for an 8-week period of time where we meet once a week for 8 weeks. And I have found that within that period of time, whatever it is that the client comes to me for, they can feel a shift themselves. And then it's also a great period of time for them to feel empowered to do this work on their own and feel comfortable doing it. I mean, that's always my intention, is for them to be able to feel comfortable continuing to do this on their own.
Well, I think that answered what I was looking for pretty darn well. So thank you for that. Because everybody's different, obviously. My pain level is higher than another's, and another's is higher than mine. On days I'm like, there's no possible way that anybody feels more pain than I do, right? We go into those like tunnel vision little modes, and I'm trying to get better about that too. But I'm like picturing myself like walking through the supermarket, because when I go to the supermarket, when I actually do that instead of using Instacart, thank you Instacart for coming into my life. Oh my God, where were they? When I go to the market, I like always have earbuds in my ears because musics are usually stupid. And so I'm singing in the hall, in the aisles, and sometimes I'll find myself like doing a pirouette. And so now I'm just going to be walking through like tap taparoo here.
I love it. Tap taparoo. I'm gonna use that. It's great.
Isn't that from like Happy Gilmore or something? It's lifted. It is not mine. I will not take credit for it, but I feel like it's Happy Gilmore with Adam Sandler. But anyway, just tap it in. Yeah, it is. It's Happy Gilmore. Anyway, so okay, I love this. So can you chit chat with me a little bit about doing this in a group setting versus doing it in a one-on-one with somebody like you? Because I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on that, as people might be like, oh, I've got this big group thing that I'm going to go do, and they're nervous about doing that or have anxiety about that in and of itself. And do you recommend either or?
Yeah. Well, I think if you knowingly have experienced trauma, and that trauma is impacting how you're feeling, I would definitely recommend one-on-one. And for those of you that want to experience this in a group, it's just done a little bit differently. So everybody comes together, and everybody tunes into what their issue is, whatever is causing them stress, what part of their body is in pain for them, how that pain is feeling in their body, what words they would use to describe it. And everybody gives it a number on that scale of 1 to 10. And we do that just so that we can gauge throughout the practice, where we are and if it's working. And then I ask for a volunteer, and that volunteer is going to share what they're feeling and their thoughts. And then I ask everybody else to kind of put their stuff aside, and then we focus all of our attention on the volunteer, and we use the volunteer's words. And so I say a sentence, and then the volunteer repeats that sentence, and everybody else repeats it too, right? So everybody's like an echo in the room. So we're all using the volunteer's words. And there's real power in saying the phrases out loud as opposed to just saying it in your head. Because sometimes when something feels really, really true at the onset, and particularly like if we're talking about maybe a negative belief that you're having, or a limiting belief, like I'm not worthy, for example. And then you start to say that I'm not worthy, and you're tapping on the points, I'm not worthy. And then it starts to feel like, oh, that is just ridiculous. You start to like create this space between it, and it starts to feel different. With pain, what can happen is you are focusing in on the pain, and the volunteer is, maybe describing shoulder pain as this sharp stabbing shoulder pain, right? And we can use those words. And oftentimes with pain, the pain will move to a different part of the body. And to me, that is always an indicator that there's definitely an emotional component to it, because we call that chasing the pain. So to get back to the group versus the individual, the volunteer continues to share their story. We do several rounds of tapping, and then everybody pauses and checks back in with their specific issue, and we see where that number has gone. And more times than not, even though we're using the volunteer's words, everybody else in the group will have felt some sort of shift as well.
That's so interesting. Well, it's like the power of, the energy of a group too.
Mhm.
I mean, you can get like negative mojo from, a group of people. You're like, ugh, this is gross. I don't like this. Then when you're in a group that wants to heal and wants to work together towards a common destination, which is healing themselves,
Right.
I feel like we should feel pretty safe in those experiences
Yeah.
and allow ourselves to feel safe. And I've got safety issues from stuff that happened to me when I was a little girl and also into my adulthood. And so safety is a big issue for me. And doing something like that and being vulnerable, even though I'm just this wild, wackadoo little chick over here, I am also very, very, very private. Like, so doing this show, I have like, okay, I am opening up the floodgates. I am going to be as vulnerable as I possibly can. And I told my mom, like, if you listen to the show, you're going to have some questions. Because there's a bunch of shit she just doesn't know about what happened to me when I was young because I was protecting her.
Yeah.
And in so doing, not protecting myself. And that's something that I've learned and that I'm trying to work through. But and I do believe wholeheartedly a lot of that stuff is just stuck in my bod.
Mhm.
It's just sitting here like, let me out. It's like
Yeah.
screaming. It's screaming at me. Let me out of here. Set me free.
Yeah. Well, have you ever read the book, The Body Keeps the Score?
Like 100 times.
Yeah.
And you are the, I don't know, umpteenth person that's been doing this show with me that talks about it.
Yeah.
Because it rings true. Ooh, heavy.
Yeah. Yeah. Our bodies hold on. They just hold on to this stuff, which is why we need to create the space to acknowledge how we're feeling. And, the majority of people out there don't do that because it can be uncomfortable. That's where the growth comes in, is allowing yourself to feel the discomfort and move through it.
Well, I love that. I mean, just acknowledging that. And you said something like holding space for how you feel and how that's so important in the healing process. Is because we're all in a traffic jam all the time with all these different things going on. And it's like, well, we gotta the lights gotta turn green at some point so we can like drive through this mess.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that idea that we have like that in society, we have to go, 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 push, 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 right?
Oh yeah.
No, we kind of need to just like sit down, just be, and allow ourselves to feel our feelings.
Slow your roll.
Yeah. Big time. Big time. Feel it to heal it, baby. Feel it to
Oh
heal
my gosh. We have like 18 bumper stickers so far, I think, on this. Maybe even more than that. So, when you talked to me briefly about trauma informed yoga, can you tell me tell us what that actually means to you
Yeah.
and the experience that you have with that? Because that popped out at me when I was getting prepped for us. And I was like, I've never actually read about trauma informed yoga before.
Yeah. So it's this idea that yoga is for everybody. I think you look on Instagram and you think of these like tiny little girls that are twisting their bodies into pretzels, right? And that's what we think
Yeah.
of with yoga. That's really not the case. And it's making yoga safe and accessible to everyone and all body types. And I was trained through Warriors at Ease, who works with veterans and veterans who have amputations, even somebody who is completely bedbound. You can still do breathing techniques, which is yoga. It's just another modality of being able to tune in to your body and find that stillness because the answers are all there.
I love yoga so very much. And I used to just rock it all the time. Well, I have to do it pretty modified because I can't stand on my feet. Certainly not for 45 minutes, that's for sure. On one foot, holding another one over my head, right? But I get so much out of it. And that's one of the things I'm missing a lot of the activities that I used to do because I was a super sportsy girl. I was in dance and skiing and hiking and biking and blah, blah, and I'm missing so much of that. And that makes me sad.
Mm.
So I'm like, I got to figure out ways that I'm going to incorporate my healthy activity with my bod that I used to do.
Well, you should totally look for, if you go to the Warriors at Ease website, you can find people that are trauma informed yoga instructors that are near you that are teaching classes.
That's
And,
awesome.
make it fit your body. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because it is. And I like how you said everybody, not everybody.
Mhm.
It's the same thing, but it's different.
Right. Right. No, totally. Totally.
So is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with? I know you have a free masterclass and I'm going to put that up in the show notes, but do you have any message that you want to leave us with in reference to people that might be really touched by some of the things that you've said? And I certainly know that there's going to be a bunch of you that have been, because I certainly have. And I've had goosebumps and I have not interrupted you all of the times that they've been had.
Oh. Yeah, I would just really encourage people to explore the things that, create that curiosity. So if you're listening to this and, you happen to read a book that mentioned tapping, or that watched a documentary that had it in there and now you're suddenly listening to this, maybe that's a sign to explore it more. Or the same thing with like, oh yeah, I've been thinking about doing yoga, but I haven't found a class that's really right for me. Maybe going and seeking one out, or maybe it's trying to find a sound bath that you can see how it makes you feel. Different modalities really resonate with different people, and it's all about figuring out what is going to make you feel best, what is going to help, what I describe as come home to yourself, and give yourself that gift of exploring the things that are coming up. And I like to think that the universe gives us those little taps, those little soul nudges of like, hey, check this out. And a lot of the time, or some of the time we can ignore that, right? But don't push it away. Allow yourself to explore it, give yourself that gift, and really allow yourself to the opportunity to figure out what makes you feel good.
And also when you are going to some of these and you are trying some of these new techniques and these new practices, don't judge yourself based on the person next to you doing a different type of pretzel than you.
Right. Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
Come on, man. She's totally gluten-free and you've got mustard all over you.
We're all different. We're
all a little bit messy and all a little bit different. So give ourselves a break. And this is self-talking to me too. Like, give yourself a break.
Yeah.
And tap into listening a little bit more to our bodies, ourselves, and the energy and the message that the universe is giving us. Because sometimes it's like screaming at me and I'm like, all right, it's time to pay attention.
And one other thing I would just throw out there, I know we didn't really have a chance to talk about, how working with entrepreneurs and the...
oh gosh, my gosh, I know. Okay, yeah, for sure. Hey, I've got all day.
No, just, that like, and I think too, right, when relating it to chronic pain, when you're in pain, your mindset can kind of get in that negative headspace of, maybe I'm not worthy of this goal, or, who am I to think I can do this, or those types of things. And if you're an entrepreneur, that's going to impact how you're showing up, not only in your personal life, but in your business. And so I also do, right now it's a free group. It's offered once a month, the first Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. Eastern. And it's for entrepreneurs to come together and bring their business issues and their feelings about how they're, today I had a session, or that group led that group. And there were two people that were dealing with launches and their anxiety and stress over feeling like they weren't good enough, or that it was going to fail, all of these thoughts, which our energy is impacting that, right? So if we're thinking we're going to fail, that's not really setting us up for success, right?
No kidding.
And
yeah.
So working through that, acknowledging it, let's not ignore it, let's acknowledge it and move through it. And then you can begin to, create those new results, those better results that you want when your mindset is in a better space.
I'm in the middle of launching a whole new division in my marketing agency. And I have those thoughts exactly going on in my brain. Like, what if? And I've run my business for 23 years. So it's not like I'm not afraid of running a business. Holy moly. This is just a whole different beast.
Yeah. And it's just, sometimes entrepreneurship can feel lonely, and having that group of people and then having somebody share a concern that you two have, like, that's like validating and like, I'm not alone, like,
yeah, it affirms that your feelings are valid.
Yeah.
I love it. I love this so much. You're just wonderful. And obviously we can keep talking for the rest of the day, but I will let you go and do other things besides talk to me.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. I've learned so much from you in such a brief span of time. And you can find her at mindshiftwithlauren.com as well. And I'll be putting her information up on social, of course, and in show notes. So she'll, we'll be all up on her business.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm on Instagram a lot too. You can find me there, Mindshift with Lauren.
Yeah. Well, I'll tag you all over the place, babe. You are exclusively invited to share this VIP Taparoo pain journey together. Let's get to the heart of how to heal with you by my side. Please follow the Pain Game Podcast wherever you digest your podcast content. We will be there. Visit us at thepaingamepodcast.com and follow us on all the socials. Thanks for listening, my little VIPs. Catch you on the other side.